Thanks to all of our witnesses. There is no doubt, it's undisputed, that we have a President Trump, who is the historic leader when it comes to tweeting, when it comes to bragging, and when it comes to whining. But Dr. Furman, I would ask you about his record economically compared to the Obama administration on some key indices. When it comes to wage growth, I believe it's been slower after the tax law than under the last couple of years of the Obama administration. We know that business investment actually has gone down during the last 3 quarters, though I understand Mr. Holtz-Eakin blames that on Trump's easy-to-win trade wars. And we know that the number of corporations that paid no taxes at all went up after this tax law. We know that while President Obama was addressing the deficit, that the king of debt, as he describes himself, has nearly doubled the deficit as compared with the last period of the Obama years. And I was just wondering if you can explain to us, if you can account for why President Trump has been a failure in keeping up with the Obama administration on so many key indices.
Thank you for your question and for making those points. I think it's certainly the case that growth this past year, for example, was 2.3%. That would fall towards the middle to bottom of the range of the economic recovery. Job growth in the last year was 175,000. That would be the lowest in the last 8 years. You noted that wages, and that's correct, for wages adjusted for inflation, which is what workers care about, were up at a faster pace in the last 2 years under President Obama than they have been in the last 2 years. And I think when your economic policy is a combination of creating a lot of uncertainty on trade, a lot of uncertainty in the fiscal system, and just uncertainty in general, that's probably not going to have a hugely beneficial impact. I'd also add the immigration restrictions, which I think will be economically very damaging over time.
Thank you. Professor Kaiser, you described the action that the Treasury Department, meeting regularly with corporate lobbyists and their lawyers, had, that there weren't enough giveaways in the Republican tax law as it passed, that they've managed to expand those giveaways through what Ranking Member Brady refers a rewrite. It certainly there has, I believe he said, to accompany a rewrite. There certainly has been a rewriting over there. Hasn't that rewrite expanded the number of giveaways to these corporations on their taxes by tens of billions of dollars?
Yes, I would agree with that.
And I believe the total re-estimate that has been done by the Congressional Budget Office is that it's up about $110 billion, much of that relating to Treasury's wrongful action. Can you explain, under the Republican tax law, how a United States multinational can lower its tax bill on offshore profits by building a factory overseas?
Sure. GILTI, the minimum tax regime, allows an exemption for a deemed return on your assets abroad. So the more assets you have abroad, the less GILTI minimum tax you pay.
Do you believe that there are a number of new provisions in the tax law that benefit multinationals, encourage them to ship jobs and profits overseas, that should be closed, as I propose in the No Tax Breaks for Outsourcing Act that's now been joined by over 100 of our colleagues in sponsoring?
Yes, Congressman, I would agree with that.
The provision that is the FD2 provision is intended to provide an incentive to locate intellectual property here in the United States. How does it actually provide an incentive to keep physical assets overseas?
FDII is a deduction that is reduced by the amount of assets that you have in the United States. So the more assets you have here, the less FDII income you have that gets the deduction.
So I think really the question is not whether these provisions have been a failure in addressing the problem of outsourcing jobs and profits, but what this committee will do about it. We now have experience with this tax law. We know that it benefited these multinationals and a few individuals sitting at the top of the economic ladder, but the cost to our economy is immense in terms of debt, and our ability to do something about it is real, and I hope we will move forward on an outsourcing bill and other key reform legislation. I yield back.